This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Third and heading for 2018. Very pleasant good morning. Time for Moneyinfo, brought to you by Princeton Research. Get that research paper every Sunday with Charles Moscowitz in Boston and the one and only Mike King in Las Vegas. Guys, happy holidays and a very pleasant good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks, Greg. We're just so that you have a little recap here, the market is just slightly lower. The only thing that's really getting hurt here are some of those bogus cryptocurrency stuff.
Oh, man. What a joke.
There's one that I was playing with at 110. It's been as high as 700, and the SEC came out and suspended trading this morning. It closed last night at 575. So there'll be a little bit of pain there. So I just want to jump right to our guest. I want to introduce everyone to Jerry Bailey. He is an ex-president of Exxon Arabia, and he heads a company called Petrotech, which is, I think, very exciting. So without further ado, Jerry, why don't you introduce yourself and let's talk about your company.
Well, that's very fine. Thank you very much, and good morning to you and your listeners. Yes, I am the president of Petrotech Energy, and I'm retired from Exxon, where I was the president of the Arabian Gulf region. So I'm a Middle East guy in that regard, but I'm basically a Texas oil man and been in this business for over 50 years. So I think I know a little bit about energy. So that's why I'm happy to be speaking with you this morning.
Well, I didn't think that was a Saudi accent, so I sort of. Yeah, but couldn't.
Yeah, people say, "What are you?" I say, "Well, I'm just a plain old Texas oil man." I've been there dealing with it a long time, and I'm passionate about it. And I always tell people, you've got to have a little bit of energy somewhere or another in your portfolio because it's something everybody needs, everybody uses, and unfortunately we waste a lot of it. But if they're going to do that, I'm in the business of trying to help shareholders get some value out of energy.
That sounds absolutely amazing. But couldn't you have gotten a job at a large oil company? I mean,
well, I tried to retire. That's the thing about it. After being with a large oil company.
No, that's what I meant. Has anybody ever heard of Exxon? I mean,
Well, I wonder about that, So I like to brag about it. No, they're really a great company, and they take care of people, and they certainly know their business, and they've been around a long time, and I think they're still going to be around a long time.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great career to have had there.
So the next question is, are you next in line to be Secretary of State?
No, you're not the first person to ask that question.
Yeah.
When all that happened about Rex, people started dialing my number, and they said, what do you know? What can you tell us? And I said, hey, man, I said, I'm not in that realm. For one thing, they don't pay well enough, So
I love it. I love it. That's great.
I'll stick to what I know best. But no, if anybody needs any help in that realm, I certainly have lived and worked all over the world. So I've got a few contacts. But as I say, I'm happy to be working in the domestic industry right at the moment. So that's good.
Well, now tell us a little bit about Petrotech. I know. Charles had sent me a little information yesterday. Your company sounds absolutely fascinating.
Well, it's an interesting situation. Petrotech, really, our business is the extraction of oil from the oil sands. Now, that's unique thing for the United States because we haven't done a whole lot of that, but you hear about all the stuff up in Canada where they've been working in the sands, but they've made some messes up there with all of the water involved, and it ends up with some terrible environmental issues. But Petrotech has a system for water-free, environmentally friendly oil extraction. There's no pollution involved. We don't use any water. We just have our secret sauce, and we can take the oil out of the sands and put the good sand clean back on the ground. So it's also good for remediation. We can also clean up spills of any oily sands anywhere. So very unique and specific type business there.
Wow, that's amazing. And it is an operating business? I mean, you've already got something going in Utah?
Yes, we do. When I came on board, I first heard about this company from some other friends, and they said they need an experienced oil guy, and I guess I fit that, criteria. But I said, well, you've got a good technology that you developed, but now you got to show people it works. So we did. We have a plant in Vernal, Utah, which is some 100 miles east of Salt Lake City, which is right in the heart of the oil sands. 55% of all the oil sands in the United States are in Utah. So we built a plant. We've been producing at 250 barrels a day of oil. It really works, and we've been selling it to refiners in Salt Lake City primarily.
Wow. That's amazing. And this is what you're talking about is very environmental friendly extraction, right?
Yes, that's right. There's been a lot of people have tried this system. People say, well, how is yours different? I said, well, what I found out with this process, and by the way, I'm a chemical engineer by trade, so I know the oil business and I know the chemical business. But this system is not like anyone else that I've seen or come up with. In other words, there's been a lot of people trying to find the right ingredients to extract the oil, but most of it leaves some residual pollution effect, or certainly some liquids and things to be disposed of, that this system doesn't. It's what we call closed loop. And for your listeners, what that really means is that nothing goes out of the system once it's injected. The ore is contacted with the solvent, and the solvent takes out the oil. It just continues to recycle the solvent. So nothing goes in the air, nothing goes out on the ground, except, as I said, the clean sand. So that's what's unique about it. And a lot of people said, well, we've heard of other people trying this. And I said, yes, if you look at some of the efforts that have been done, people have spent millions of dollars of shareholder money, unfortunately, and came up with nothing. But we have it, and people say, well, how can you be the first person? I said, the people probably told the Wright brothers that thing's not going to fly, because nobody's done it. Well, it's kind of the way that Petrotech did. We have a technology that happens to be unique. No one else has got this in operation anywhere.
Wow. That is absolutely amazing. And what's even more amazing, knowing Utah as I do, that you're going to find oil sands east of Salt Lake City. I think that is absolutely fascinating. So, like the areas where they were fracking, like in the Dakotas, I mean, could you utilize your system there?
Well, it wouldn't be used to replace fracking. Fracking, again, for maybe those who don't know a lot about it, really involves going down into the earth and, as a fracking or cracking or breaking open the pores and the avenues within the rocks and the sand to let the oil flow freer. That's not what this does. It's not a downhole under the ground process. It's an opportunity to take ore that's readily available and then just treat it like you would just take sand and put it in a bucket and then put some solvent in it. It's the same thing as taking a plate that's full of grease or, from your dishwasher and putting soap on it. The soap just attracts the grease and pulls it off the plate. That's the way this works. It attracts the oil and pulls it out of the sand. But it doesn't replace fracking per se, but it provides another source of oil like fracking does. Fracking's enhanced the ability to produce more oil, and that's what this does. No one's done this anyway successfully, and so it's going to open up millions and millions of other barrels of oil in the United States and around the world, by the way. A lot of places have similar type sands that will be able to be produced, as I said, in a very environmentally friendly way. So it does add to our capabilities without causing any more problems or difficulties.
Doctor, this is absolutely amazing. What other areas outside of Utah are there where this system could just get in and start producing right away?
Well, there's several other places in the United States. There's some spots in South Texas. There's some in Missouri. There's some in Kentucky. But then primarily, as I say, it's around the Utah area. But there are places around the world like Indonesia, Australia. We're talking to some folks in Australia about some work. There's some in the Dominican Republic and in Trinidad. There's places in Afghanistan and China. So there's a number of places that do you have the sands and need a way to work them and extract the oil. And we've talked with a number of those places already. So we're looking forward to expanding our stuff not only in the U.S. but worldwide. So there's a lot of opportunity there for the growth and expansion.
Well, you obviously, seeing that you were the Exxon president in the Gulf region, obviously security is an issue. Once you go in there, having all that experience over there, are you concerned, or does that give you even more ammunition because you know what areas are really safe?
Well, a couple of points there quickly. Yes, security is always an issue, and certainly in a lot of volatile places like the Middle East. It's, as I used to say, it's always boiling under the surface. There's other things always happening. But again, you pick your places and you know where you're going and what you're doing, but then it also means by doing more things like this in the United States, we reduce our dependency on having to go into those tough spots. Unfortunately, most oil seems to always be found in the most harsh environments. So if we can do that in a nice place like Utah, well, that enhances our security ability, as well as security in the source of keeping us more independent of having to go to those other places and find that oil. So,
boy, I agree.
I think I know how to manage that situation.
Yeah, well, you of all people, I would imagine, could do that. So,
I could tell you a lot of stories that we don't have time.
Well, we've got till midnight, so go ahead. No, but seriously, give us today's status of the company. Are you, it sounds like with everything going on in Utah, you could use expansion.
Expansion is right. You're right on it. I said we had a plant operating at 250 barrels a day, but people said, well, that's great. What can you do more than that? I said, well, how big do you want me to go? So anyway, we picked up another lease in the same area of 2,000 acres that is full of this ore, this sand that just lies on the surface. And you can just scoop it up with a front end loader. And we started building another plant. As we speak, we're building 1,000 barrel a day plant. That's 4 times what we were doing, and it will be in operation by the end of February to show people we can expand. We can. This process is scalable. It can go up larger. So we're sitting on a reserve area that we own that has something over 80 million barrels of recoverable oil. Now,
Wow.
if you figure what the math is on 80 million barrels of oil, it goes over the billion number of dollars. So that's where we are expanding the plant. We own all of these reserves, all of this oil to be extracted. That's what we got. But we got more things going. This is not a deal to just build tons of steel in the Utah desert. We're looking at joint ventures with other people. We're looking to license this stuff worldwide. But in the meantime, we have a nice revenue stream of selling oil. But this will turn out to be a technology play, in my opinion, as I say, because no one has this technology. So that's what we're talking to people about, where we can just sit at the office and just have other people doing the work and sending us checks for their royalties. So
there you
yeah,
go.
that kind of dovetails. That kind of dovetails with what Tim Connolly has been discussing with us. From the standpoint of the people with the technology to get oil and have a lower lifting cost are the guys who are going to make the money in the oil business. I mean, he's been saying that for a year, and clearly this is one of those examples.
No, you're correct, or he's correct. That the money is made primarily on the front end in the energy business. He who controls the resource and the technology is where the money comes in. And so that's where it keeps the cost down, and then other people see that, and they say, if we had that, we could do more. So you're right. That's exactly the way to look at it. So we have interest in conventional oil as well. We own a portion of a company extracting the regular, regular extraction of oil called Accord Energy in Texas. We own some of that, and we're also involved in, as I said, different types of technology to enhance oil flow. Out of the conventional methods in the ground. So there's other ventures and streams for our revenue that are on the table. And I want to mention, too, while we've got a minute, one thing that we're also involved in is I've got us started in this the use of the blockchain approach to improving efficiency, where you have more like the cloud, where people put their information now off their computers. People are going to what they call blockchain, where all the oil companies and oil service groups can be more connected via the web to do their transactions instantaneously, whether it's sales or marketing or production, a lot of data. So blockchain, you'll see that word more and more used. And we formed a venture with another group, and we call it PetroBlock, PetroBloq, and that's what we're using as our platform to develop that. So that's another exciting thing that we're really anxious to see develop and go forward. Everyone will be using such blockchain efforts in the future, I think.
Well, Charles has been talking about that. Yep. Go ahead, Charles.
The thing that really impressed me here in this deal was the fact that it's also green. Jerry and I have talked about this before. It's dramatically different than what they do up in Canada, and I think Jerry was telling me that there's water involved also. It's not just oil and sand, where you can have all that clean sand after the fact for the environment. With most of the Canadian deals, it's a different substance that they're running through, and there is an issue. So anything that's green and energy, we put in a pretty nice little consolidation here. A month ago and 2 months ago, every time we hit $53, $54, 4 days later we were down in the $46 to $47 area. Now, we've been hanging in this 55, 58 area, and it looks like a new consolidation where, energy is going to come on again. Well,
I think that's correct, too. the energy sector, like I say, there's a demand. People have to have it. Things are going all the time and growing all the time. And I think being able to do that in a green manner. Look, I've got grandkids myself. People say, oh, the oil business sometimes is not all that environmentally friendly. Well, that's images of the old days. Nowadays, no one does anything that would be harmful. And I've got grandkids that I want to make sure they live in a clean environment and a green approach in the future too. But you have to get there with energy, and this gives people who are concerned about the environment an opportunity to at least look at our process and potentially invest maybe in this type of green energy that is the best of both worlds. It doesn't harm the environment, and it actually cleans up the environment, and at the same time results in a product that we need. And Canada is different. Their sands are under the ground. They have to use steam and hot water to loosen the oil up to get it out. We don't do that. We don't need to do that. We extract it from the surface. It's just like an open pit type mining operation. And so we can do it very cost effective. We do it for under $30 a barrel. So even at these prices, we can make good money. Up there, those prices are like $55 or $60 a barrel. They can't even make money today. We've been making money. Even when we hit the bottom over a year ago at like $29, I was on TV at that time on the Stuart Varney show on Fox Business, and he was asking me about oil. I said, I really think it's at the bottom. I don't think it's going to go any lower. He says, how do you know that? I said, well, I've been in this business a long time. I know a lot of people. And I made that call, and I'll be darned. I walked out of that studio that day in New York at $29 a barrel, and it's been going up ever since. So people think I'm a hero, but it was a wild guess. I mean, it could have gone either way.
Do you have any trouble finding workers?
Finding workers?
Sounds like it's,
no.
Yeah. Good.
You mean to operate our process?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Our plant?
Especially since it's a technology. It's not that specialized that you have
It's
trouble
not that
finding
specialized.
people.
You're right. It's not as complex as you might think. It doesn't take but a few people to run an operation like this. And no, there's plenty of workers. There's the country literally is full of people with this type of skill. There's nothing here to this. As I say, we take the ore off the ground, put it in a conveyor belt, drop it in the top of a tower, counterflow it with our process, with our solvent, and it extracts it. It just takes a few people to operate this, but there are plenty of people that have basic, mechanical skills to do this type of thing. So we've provided some more employment in the Utah area, and we will provide even more. But there's no problem of having, it's nothing unique like that.
Dr. Bailey, I know Tim Connolly has always talked about West Texas and areas all the way up to San Antonio and Oklahoma. Will this system work in those areas as well? And actually, another question, too. You brought up Canada. Weather-wise, are you limited to, like, the lower 48, if you will, deserts, or would it work, say, in Alaska?
Let me answer those quickly and concisely as
Sure.
I can. Number one, West Texas, primarily with an area they call the Permian Basin, and that runs around Midland, Odessa, that type of area. There's still millions of barrels of oil there to be extracted, but those are not sands. That's deep wells, and those are conventional sources. So that's not a target for us. There will be plenty of oil pulled out of there, and if any of your listeners own some leases and land in West Texas, then that's great for them. But that's not our target type thing. We will be, another source. As far as the weather doesn't really affect our operations. I mean, I've got an opportunity to be dealing in the snow. It snows in Utah up there. This doesn't affect anything because it's very simple to just take care of putting the ore into our system. In Canada, I've been up there and talked to a number of people. there are not these type of sands in Canada to use, but what we can do and possibly will do is help them clean up the environmental mess they have. I said as we spoke earlier, this also has a remediation technology. Those tailing ponds, they call them, where they have this leftover water and sludge that still has some oil left in it and water, they just store it in the open. It's leaching out all over the ground up there. And I've told them I could set up a way to de-water some of those ponds and just concentrate that sludge, treat it with my solvent, and we could clean up that mess. That would be a company maker in its own right. And yes, that's a target, and it could be done.
Wow. Now, knowing the Rockies, I would think that if you went straight north from Utah and got into, say, Alberta or say in the Winnipeg area, wouldn't those sands be sort of similar in the Rockies, or am I totally whacked?
They're not the same because, again, they are locked deep in the earth
okay.
with a different molecular type structure, and the way they have an affinity for water, where the sands in the lower 48 are drier. They don't have the water in contact, nor do they need water to help the solvent work. So it's a totally different. I'm not going to be trying to use this type of technology in the sands that they have in Canada. That's different.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, so where are you going? Give us kind of a 5-year projection. I mean, this is absolutely fascinating what you're doing.
Well, as I briefly mentioned just a few minutes ago, the vision ahead is a technology play to license this, to continue now my discussions with other countries, and I've got a number of those that are in process. Obviously, I can't reveal all those details, but there are countries that have been watching us. They have visited our plant, and they're saying, hey, you've got this going. Now we'd like to talk to you about coming to our country or to our locations, show us how to do it, and we will pay you for that technology and use. That's the main vision, to be able to expand it in that way. But in the meantime, we will continue to have a revenue stream of our own, just extracting oil domestically as we see it. So I think over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, we will grow the company by these contacts in other locations, letting other folks have access to this technology. So that's that's
like
the primary
it,
move. Pardon?
Like licensing it.
Yes,
showing
exactly.
them how to do it and then getting a license on it. That's great.
Yes, that's right, because it can be, and that can be very lucrative, because as I say, at this time, no one else has this type process to do it with. So that
right,
would
and
be.
there's no cost of goods sold on a license.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, a lot of profit there.
Well,
And by the way, I just want to
Charles.
mention one thing, Greg. The stock, the symbol for which is P as in Peter, Q, E as in Edward, F as in Frank, F as in Frank. While the company is small cap, the stock trades very well. It's liquid, and besides that, you don't have the big spread that you have. I mean, there are companies like this, this size in particular, that trade, $1.25 bid, offered at $1.50, and become illiquid. This stock has a 1 penny spread at $1.62, $1.63, and it trades, a couple of 100,000 shares every day, and it's a good solid market, which makes it, a little bit nicer for the investing public, where wide spreads of 15, 20, 25% are very common.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Hi. Gerald, can you give people the website? The website is exceptional, by the way. It really goes through all this and shows all of the work on the processes and everything else. So why don't you give us that?
Yeah,
I
yes,
think
it's
Tim should get involved in this.
Well, it's
Right.
Petrotech Energy. It's Petroteq. I'll get it right here. Dot energy, ENERGY, and that's it. Petrotech dot energy, and it gives
And I'll
the
be
diagram.
mentioning it again. I'll be mentioning it again and putting
Okay.
a link to the website in tonight's daily note. So
Good.
Because it shows
will
plenty of
see that.
pictures and explains all of this. Lots of good data there, and
Yeah.
it's very informative, I think.
Well,
It's unique, and people have to know it's something different.
Dr. Bailey, this is absolutely amazing. Did I hear Tim's voice?
You did indeed.
So we have two oil men on this show at the same time?
Wow.
Holy smokes.
That's
And
dangerous.
just so you know, Tim, I've already quoted you.
Yeah,
I'm giving you credit for it.
yeah, you
Well, by the way, I agree completely. It's a great site. This is a good-looking site. Very crisp.
Okay, thank you.
Very, very nicely done.
well,
I don't
well,
take
great.
credit for that. We all guys. I'm not all that technology sound as those internet stuff. But hey, my guys do a good job with that. I appreciate that.
well, Tim, coming from the oil side, do you have any questions for Dr. Bailey? This is great.
Well, not yet, because I unfortunately came on 5 minutes later than I intended, so I didn't get to hear him. But I'm certainly going to read this and do a little research about Petrotech and about their space and their approach, because I'd certainly like to find out about it.
Well, Doctor,
Well, that's fine, Tim. I appreciate your interest.
Doctor, I think obviously we're halfway through the show. We have new listeners coming on all the time, apparently all over the world, it looks like. Just tell us in brief what you are doing in the deserts east of Salt Lake City.
Well, that's where we erected our first oil extraction plant. And people say, well, does it work? I said, it certainly does. I said, to simplify it, I said, all we have to do is just scoop up the ore, the oil-containing sands, and we treat it with our solvent in a small footprint plant. Probably not much bigger than a small house, about 2,500 square feet. We would use to be able to deliver 250 barrels of oil a day, which we've been hauling by truck to Salt Lake City and selling to refiners over there. And that's keeping us busy. And I mentioned earlier, for new people coming on to listen, that we are now in the process of expanding the plant to 1,000 barrels a day, which will be on stream by the end of February. And the uniqueness, too, of this is oil sands is typically what we call heavier oil. And people who may not be familiar with that, oil has different viscosities. Some of it flows very freely, like you think of oil putting in your engine, as compared to other oil qualities is like molasses, some of it, and that's more like heavy oil. But the refiners need heavy oil. A lot of the stuff coming out of the Permian Basin in Texas, West Texas Intermediate, and stuff up in Montana, North Dakota, a lot of this is lighter crude. The refiners need heavy crude to balance the flow into their production schemes. So there's a tremendous demand for sources of properly extracted heavy oil, which is what we provide. So that's what we're busy doing right now. And we're not just some pie-in-the-sky idea sitting on some laboratory table. This is in business. I mean, you can put your hand on it, you can smell it, and get your hands dirty with it. It's real oil coming out of the sands and being sold.
And Doctor, I'm looking at the description of the technology. What's unique here that I'm very curious about is it does not require high temperatures for you to extract the fluids out of the sands. So this says 50 to 60 degrees centigrade?
That's correct. We warm it up enough to make sure everything flows smoothly, but this is not a process that's using – heat is not a key ingredient to try to break anything up or do any effects physically on on the oil or the product.
So all in,
flowing, as you said earlier, it gets a little cold outside. You got to keep the oil where it'll flow well enough. So yes, we use some heat, but that's not a incremental.
What is your all-in lifting cost then per barrel?
About $28 a barrel. And the
That's
larger
very
we go,
good
we
for sand.
figure we
Very
can
good
bring
for
that
sand.
down. We'll bring it down even lower with this larger expansion, down to around 25,
that's almost competitive
26.
with you, Tim.
Andy is on.
Yeah, well, I think, guys, this is absolutely amazing, Jerry. Yeah, it's you start thinking about this, and Timmy, what he was talking about a little bit earlier as well, is that the fact that the licensing aspect of this to other countries is certainly an interesting way to go. And other areas of the U.S., obviously talking about the deserts east of Utah, but I think earlier in the conversation you mentioned, was it Kansas and other areas of Missouri?
Yeah, there's Missouri, Kansas, some Kentucky areas, and some South Texas areas that have similar type sands that we have been looking at and talking to people. So, again, we wanted to be sure there's no questions from anyone about the capability of the technology and the process. And we're pretty much now at that stage where we will be more directly involved in, acquiring joint ventures or licensing to those other areas across the U.S. for sure.
And it sounds like it's not a particularly expensive or time-consuming issue to do the plants.
No, it's not. It's not a huge, like I say, the physical size of the plant is not very big. I could even put together small mobile units if I had to. If there were another spill like we've had in some past years along the Gulf Coast, with this technology, I could have set up something down there and cleaned that sand up without any effort.
That's something I didn't even think about.
Wow.
That is huge.
Yeah.
That's just
That is
not
huge.
That's just not an unusual circumstance in the world right now.
Well, I was, of course, this goes back to the Stone Ages. You guys are all too young for this, but in the 60s, we had a huge oil spill off Santa Barbara. And of course, it was a mess. And I will never forget, Union Oil just had straw all over the beach in Santa Barbara. And we're walking along with President Nixon. And so we're walking in the sands. And they had all the straw on the beach. So, I mean, you just thought it was sand. And he fell in a hole. And,
oh, goodness.
And of course, he had gray slacks on that were soon very black and blew his stack. And it was like a very embarrassing situation for the VP of Union Oil, who was walking along with the president. And ironically, the White House press corps was not along. It was just three of us from Santa Barbara that were there with the president. It was amazing. But, yeah.
Well, this technology would clean up stuff like that.
That's amazing.
If the oil got on
That
the
is amazing.
sands,
Because,
we can
it's
run
one
that
thing to have
sand through our system. Yeah, and it would clean it up.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, it's one thing to have a process that doesn't harm the environment, but to take it to that next level and have a process that can help literally clean up the environment when there is an issue is really terrific. And I'm thinking that, on the basis of that, the licensing of that side of the technology could be almost as big as the oil production.
Well, that's right. So I want people to remember this is also, besides producing oil, it's a remediation technology, because that's the same thing, whether the oil is already naturally, in the sand, or whether it's something we ended up putting on the sand from some other spill. It's the same effect. Once we scoop up that sand with the oil contact, we can treat it and get that oil out of it. So it's a great addition to what we do.
Well, Jerry, you say that you're trucking the oil to a terminal in Salt Lake.
Yes.
Is there a possibility that these sand fields could get large enough where there would be like a pipeline involved or something like that down to where Tim is down in Houston?
You're very astute. That's a very good point, and that's exactly where these things lead to. Most oil production works that way. When you have a small operation, you typically truck it to a refining location. But as it grows, which it can do here, it can be by pipeline or by rail. And we have talked to people, particularly in Utah, about this. There are some existing lines, so if we grow continually there, or we could go those other routes, and certainly we can get it. There's enough transportation, capability with rail and pipelines to get it to refiners in Texas for sure.
What's the transportation cost per barrel today that you're having to pay for trucking costs to your buyer?
Well, right. We spend a couple of dollars a barrel that way, and that's all part of that all-in cost, just to be having to truck it. So that still keeps us, as I say, everything considered, we're under $30.
So all-in cost of under $30, but that does not include royalties?
Yeah, that includes all of that. Mm-hmm. There's some small royalties that go to the original leaseholder of the land.
Wow. This is amazing.
That's very good.
That's
very competitive.
It's really competitive.
And how many barrels a day are you currently producing?
It's only 250 right now. Well, actually, we're not producing it at the moment. I dismantled the plant, and I'm moving it, to a new lease about 5-6 miles away and rebuilding it. But we were producing 250 barrels a day. And by the end of February, we'll be back up producing 1,000 barrels a day.
Well, you just answered my question. What's your mobilization time for the move and to be producing again in your new lease?
We've been working on it now for about 2 months. Since early November, we've been working to lay the foundations and start putting the steel back up. So I got 2 more months, January, February, before I'll be back in business.
Boy, that sounds. Hey, Tim, I think you need to get Dr. Bailey to build one of these at your Shea Connolly, and in Houston, and it's see how that works, huh?
Well, as Mike knows, I am largely now involved on the financing side because we've sold most of our producing assets. We have 1,000 acres that's actually closing on Friday. But I would be very interested in speaking to the doctor and learning more about this. Very, very interesting.
Okay, anytime.
Because your percentage of extraction is incredibly high. A friend of mine built the Suncor facility up in Alberta, and they get, if they're lucky, they're getting somewhere between the high 20s to the mid 30s in percentage of extraction out of those tar sands, and something that can produce above 90% is pretty astounding.
Well, and they've got a tough deal in all fairness. I mean, that is tough sands to extract from up there. So, but that's why their costs are so high too. And they're doing big numbers. I mean, I give them credit for their effort, but we're not trying to compete with those guys. We have enough of our own resources and other resources around the world that can make this a winning company for a long time. So I'm not trying to compete with Canada and what they're doing.
Sure.
It's a totally different world.
Yep, it is. Absolutely.
Well, I now that we have both of you guys on the air, Dr. Bailey, if you want to go first, can we be oil sufficient in the United States? And Timmy, you can tag in too.
Well, people ask me that question a lot. There's a few caveats to that. Theoretically, if we unleashed all the capabilities that we have, we could pretty much be independent. But oil is a free market commodity, and because of that aspect, we will never reach that point because for all that we have, we still cannot produce as cheap as the Middle East can, and that's just a fact. And I've spent 20 years over there, so I know what I'm talking about. So what I'm saying is that we could produce a lot of oil, but the more we produce, if it starts to affect their budgets and their income, they will just lower the price and drive the price of oil down, so that the buyers will still be looking to go buy cheaper oil. So that's a long answer to what you're saying. We can go a long way, but when people say, "Oh, we can be totally independent," well, everybody is entitled to their opinion, but I don't believe that. Theoretically you could, but in reality you never would, because we can't compete. The price would keep dropping against us. So that's my long answer to that.
Timmy?
Except the Saudis can't afford oil that's below $50 a barrel because of their budget. They need a budget funding of in excess of $50 a barrel. So correct. There's a natural support level there that everybody's just kind of looking at each other now. The futures or 5-year futures right now are running at about $52. I just got the hedges for 5 years this morning.
They need money to sustain the standard of living of which they've become accustomed. So it's an interesting dynamic, but I think we should just keep on working to produce the best we can here in the States, try to lower our costs the best we can, which our process is pretty low, and we still can do it conventionally for under $20, $15 or so in many places. So we can make a lot of oil and make a real headway into that energy independence for sure.
Dr. Bailey, what was it like running the Gulf oil operation for Exxon? That had to be fascinating. Had you traveled to that area of the world before you actually had that position?
I had just passed through a few times, but I did not know that much about it. And then when I went over there, it was certainly an exciting opportunity and certainly a challenge. But it's nice to work in a place like that where there never was a question about the oil. It's not like you had to look for it. I mean, you just push a hole in the ground and oil comes up. So it's kind of a unique situation. But I liked it. I enjoyed it. And there were certainly a lot of challenges, but it's a very interesting industry and a dynamic that pulls people together, even folks that might be at odds normally over various political and ideology. When it comes down to energy, it's something that pulls people together because everybody has to have it. So, I had 47 different nationalities actually on the payroll. So many of them from places that would normally be fighting with each other, that they work together because this is for the common need.
That's interesting because I was going to ask you. I mean, did you have many Americans over there, or but for 47 different countries? Wow.
Yes, right. But yes, a lot of Americans, a lot of Canadians. So we had a number of, from North America that would bring the skills and technology. And my earlier jobs, before I became the president, I was seconded to the Abu Dhabi Oil Company. I helped run their operations as a manager. Then I went up to Qatar, and I helped Qatar Petroleum with their onshore operations in Duqan and Said, the oil terminal there in the field. So many of the people who are now in control were literally trained by me some years back, so when they were young fellows. So that it's been a great change over the last 20, 25 years to see the countries come from dirt streets to skyscrapers like in Dubai. When I was over there, it was, just still in the growth stages. So that's been an interesting see how the growth and how the technology, as I say, bringing Americans over to help deploy that technology to people.
Boy, absolutely, your background is just totally blows me away. But let's. We've only got this hour has flown by. Petrotech .energy is the website. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the stock symbol again. Yeah, good job, Mike. Yeah, stock symbol
is PQEFF. Q as in Queen, PQEFF.
Wow. This is you have got an absolutely amazing story. Tim, any more questions for Dr. Bailey?
No, I'm going to do some more homework, and then I will follow up with a phone call or an email. And it's been a pleasure listening to the story and looking at this. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And by the way, I might add on this.
Go ahead, Charles.
And we'll have Dr. Bailey on again after the first of the year, and we'll schedule Tim to be on the same day so that we can have a real roundtable kind of discussion.
Yeah.
Well, I will look forward to that.
Yeah, this has been a pleasant experience, to say the least, Doctor. Obviously, we've got the copyright on this show, but feel free, put this on your website. We should have it up on the web, I would imagine, in the next few hours. So feel free and utilize that. You bet. So,
and I'll put that link in my daily note tonight also.
Okay, that sounds good, Charles. And Doctor, we can't thank you enough. You've got an amazing company called Petrotech, and water-free and viral-friendly oil extraction from oil sands. Wow.
Well, I appreciate you having me, on this morning, and I hope I've not confused your listeners too much. I hope everybody has learned a little bit about the business and seen a different angle of how to achieve oil.
Well, I think, you've got a two-pronged business here. When you start talking about cleaning up spills, I mean, you see those 4, 5, maybe 6 times a year here in the U.S. I mean, that could be a whole different business for you to get into.
That's a whole different area and a different opportunity that we can cover.
There you go, an opportunity. You bet. That sounds amazing. Well, Dr. Bailey, thank you very much. The former president of Exxon of the Arabian Gulf, and now the exec at Petrotech. So thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, and good day, gentlemen.
All right, Charles, the stock again, how's it doing?
162 with a 1 penny spread.
That sounds great.
Really exceptional.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, the whole process is exceptional. I think, boy, you've hit a home run on this one. Tim, are you still with us?
I am indeed.
Merry Christmas, fella. I know you guys have been through hell this year, as we have with hurricanes, and hopefully 2018 will be better for both of us.
This is definitely a year we will all be glad to see in our rearview mirror in Houston, Texas.
And in Florida as well, believe me, as I am still dealing with Hurricane Irma damage here. So anyway, guys, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, and we will be talking with everyone at Moneyinfo after the first of the year. So stay well. Happy holidays, everyone, and Merry Christmas to all of you on the Treasure Coast, and thank you so much from the WPSL Christmas Kids. Gave Christmas to 1,000 youngsters just a few short days ago, and since we got started back in '94, that number is now 25,000 on the Treasure Coast, and we thank you. This is WPSL, Port St. Lucie, WPSL.com, webcaster to the world.